What's going on, Tamers? It's me, Guy, who's actually lost 5 kilos. Wow, weight loss actually working. Who would have thought? But besides talking about my dream to get metal Edamon abs, this video is actually going to be talking about the concept of mulligan and how you should mulligan, why you should mulligan a hand, and how to salvage a bad hand. A question that I often get whenever I do deck profiles or whenever I talk about decks in the Japanese meta is that, hey, for a starting hand, what should I get, or what should the mulligan look like for this kind of deck? I'm going to be upfront with you and right off the bat let you know that the answer here is, for the most part, not always so clear. I think a lot of my fan base are actually seasoned players, but for the folks who are watching who are new Digimon players, I want to let you know mulligan in Digimon is a little bit different from other games. So when you start the game, you're going to draw 5 cards, and then you can take a look at that hand and then you decide if you want to start the game with that hand or not. If you don't want to start the game with that hand, you take those cards, you shuffle them back into the deck, and you draw 5 more cards, and then you deal out your security. So at no point are you ever locking cards into your security before you can actually mulligan cards out. This isn't like other games where your opponent either draws an extra card or you get to draw 1 less card whenever you mulligan or anything like that. You get 5 new cards, your opponent doesn't get anything else, and they also have the option to mulligan as well. So now that we have a pretty clear idea of what mulligan is in Digimon, let's take a look at a couple of hands and talk a little bit more about why you should mulligan, when you should mulligan, and how to make the best of a bad hand. So for the purposes of today's video, I'm going to be using a deck called Red Hybrid. For folks who don't know what Red Hybrid is, it's a deck that allows you to play Tamers and then Digivolve off of those Tamers into Digimon. Now this is really nice because it allows you to have a source of attack and offense, and not only with your Digimon on board, but also with your Tamers that you have on board as well. Additionally, you can use your Digimon's inheritance effects to play other Tamers whenever they're destroyed, so the offense kind of recycles itself over and over again. So the game plan for this deck is pretty straightforward. You want to get your low level Digimon to run in and attack, and then when they're deleted from the security check, you can play Tamers and then use those Tamers to Digivolve into a Digimon again and then attack as well. Of course, this deck also has this big boss monster that allows you to delete a Digimon and then attack with multiple security checks at the same time, but for the purposes of mulligan, it's not so important. So I play this deck a lot, so I have a pretty clear understanding of how to pilot the deck and also what cards I want and don't want in my opening hand. So what I have here are 3 separate hands, and we're going to take a look at these hands and talk about if we should mulligan them or not. Before we do that, I want to talk about the most important points of mulliganing, and that is to first know exactly what your optimal game plan is from the gate. So when I take a look at a Red Hybrid hand at the beginning of the game, I look for a couple of key things. The first thing I want to have in my hand is at least 1 Tamer. If I've got 1 Tamer in my hand, I'm feeling pretty good. On top of that, if I can, I want to get a BT7 Flamon because his inheritance effect allows you to play a Tamer from your hand for free whenever he's deleted. And then the second thing I want is the BT13 Agunimon, who whenever he's deleted lets you play a Flamon from your hand. So if you have 2 Flamon in hand, then you can play one whenever he's destroyed. And if you Digivolve over him, you can play another Tamer for free. So what I'm trying to do from turn 1 is to get my Flamon down in raising and then immediately Digivolve it into an Agunimon. That way the following turn I can attack my opponent's security with him, and then if he's destroyed I can play a Tamer, and if I have another Flamon in hand I can also use Agunimon's deletion effect to play a Flamon as well. So barring a few matchups, for me personally I think this is my best opening hand for Red Hybrid. So now that we know what our optimal strategy looks like for the first couple of turns for the deck, let's take a look at a couple of hands and decide if we want to mulligan these or not. The first one here, kind of training wheels I think, kind of easy. Let's imagine you open up a hand like this. You can see that there's no Flamons at all. In fact, there's no level 3s at all, which makes this a pretty tough hand right out the gate. In older Digimon, you'd be forced to play out your 6 cost Digimon. And while I think that's a pretty tough spot to be in, I will say it's not the worst situation. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, so keep watching. Also notice that we're also missing Tamers for this hand. There's no Tamers at all. And so for this hand, definitely going to be a mulligan for me. So let's take a look at our second hand here. Now this one I think a little bit better. Let's imagine you open up a hand like this, and right off the bat you can see there's so much good stuff here. So like we talked about before, our optimal strategy turn 1, we've got our Flamon for BT7, we can evolve in raising. We've also got our Agunimon here who we can Digivolve over him for 2 and end our turn. Now, next turn you can push this guy out and you can attack with him, and then if he's destroyed in the security check, you can play the Tamer in your hand as well as the Flamon for free. So you're getting a lot of value out of this hand, and honestly, this is probably one of the best hands you can get for this deck in the start of the game. What's also nice about this hand is that you're going to get a lot of card draw off of it as well. For the example here, you're going to play your Flamon in raising, that's 1 Digivolve, so that's 1 card drawn. You're also going to be able to Digivolve into your Agunimon, that's another card drawn. And then the following turn, when you swing your Agunimon in and it's destroy, you're going to play a Tamer, but you're also going to play a Flamon. And this Flamon is also going to let you search 3 cards as well. So you're going to be able to cycle very quickly with this opening hand, which is also a really important thing, especially when your hands aren't perfect, but they're almost perfect. So definitely a keep for this hand right here. So now we're going to take a look at our last hand. I think this one's going to be a little bit more contentious. So we're going to open up this one, and you'll notice that we don't have any of the actual cards that we need, but we do have something that's also very important in Digimon that we also talked about just a moment ago. And that is the ability to cycle and draw cards. So when you take a look at a hand and it's not the perfect hand that you want, you think to yourself, okay, well, what are the chances that I can get the perfect hand within like the first 1 or 2 turns? So for this, just to keep folks in the loop if they aren't familiar with these cards, this Flamemon's gonna allow you to search 3 cards and then grab a Tamer and a hybrid Digimon, which is pretty much everything in the deck whenever it's played. Red Memory Boost is going to allow you to look at the top 4 cards and grab any red Digimon card. And then the Pokemon here is going to allow you to look at the top 5 cards and get a Tamer and a hybrid from them. So lots of value in these 3 cards alone. These 2 here, the level 5 Aldemon, kind of useless, and the 0 cost option Gravity Crush also going to be a little bit useless until later in the game. But these 3 cards here are really good for searching. So what's nice is if we think about the amount of cards we're going to be able to draw on the first turn, so you can do something like either Digivolve the Flamemon in Raising for 0 and draw a card, and then you can do something like either the Pokemon for 3 and search 5 and grab 2 cards, 1 Tamer, 1 Hybrid, which is not bad. The other option here is to play the Memory Boost. I love playing Memory Boosts early or cards that refund you memory really early in the game because you're going to get a lot more value and resource off of them. So especially on turn 1 when you're giving your opponent 3 memory to work with to pass the turnover, I like to think of this as like a loan, where I'm actually just loaning out my opponent a couple of memory, and then later on I can use the Red Memory Boost effect to gain memory back on the delay. So let me know, would you keep a hand like this? I know that this doesn't have any of the optimal strategy cards that we talked about before, but it does give us a lot of resource and value that we can use later on in the game. Another thing to think about is that this deck is very aggressive, and so having to wait out a couple of turns might be a little bit detrimental to you, so keep that in mind as well. So the last thing I want to touch on is actually making the best out of a bad hand. Now in Digimon, you do have the option to mulligan, but there's no guarantee that the second hand you're going to get is going to be any better. Now let's imagine that we got a hand that looked like this, and then we mulligan and we got another hand that looked like this. In a lot of cases, you're probably just going to play out what you can. Something to think about when you have a bad hand in Digimon and you've mulliganed already and you can't do anything about it, you just got to start the game that way, is even if you have to start at a higher level Digimon, for example, we have no level 3, so we're going to start at a level 4 for this deck, keep in mind that if not on this turn, but at least the following turn, if you're able to get more card draw off of the way your hand works, you should definitely go that route. So in this hand here, I would actually play the Burning Greymon out turn 1 because I know that I can Digivolve my Burning Greymon into another Burning Greymon because it has the Digivolve cost of 1 from a level 4. Because it's level 4, I can do a 1 cost Digivolve the following turn, so I'm going to get a little bit more card draw that way. Another thing to think about is that even though you're giving your opponent 6 memory to work with, a lot of times, for most decks, not all, your opponent can't actually attack the first turn of the game or their first turn of the game. So something to think about is that you can probably put out something pretty big, and unless they have removal in hand, they're probably not going to be able to take it out. Again, it's not the best situation, but you have to play with the hope that your Digimon on board is actually going to survive. And if it doesn't survive, then I mean, there was nothing that you were going to do anyway to help this hand, so you kind of take the loss and keep moving forward. You're probably thinking that you also have the option to pass in Digimon, where instead of just playing a big Digimon on board, like something like a 6 cost, you can just pass, give your opponent 3 memory. But honestly, starting the game with nothing and passing on a turn and only being able to draw 1 card next turn is a pretty dire situation. So even if I have like something pretty big in hand, I think I usually like to go up to like a cost 6 Digimon. If I have to play a cost 6 Digimon, I'll do it, but anything more than that, I might actually consider passing. So to summarize there, if I have a Digimon that's 6 costs in my hand and that's the lowest cost that I have, then I'm probably going to play that Digimon out. Now, why is that? So let's imagine that we actually give our opponent 6 memory, and we're taking a look at our opponent's hand now, and they have 6 memory to work with from their opening turn. So again, opening turn, they're probably going to do something like play the Flamemon to get the search effect, and then Digivolve for 2 into the Gunimon, and that's already 5 memory like that. So giving away 5 memory is not that bad. They can either, if they have it, go into level 5 in their hand, or they can probably play a Tamer or another Digimon. But for the most part, if you're playing a cost 6 Digimon, you're not giving your opponent too much to work with. I mean, I think that a 6 cost Digimon is salvageable. Anything more than that, I think, is pretty rough, though. So with that said, we're going to wrap this video up. I hope you guys learned a lot about Mulligan and how you should approach Mulligan in your own time. Also, let me know your thoughts and comments about the not optimal hand, but the pretty good hand that we got before. Would you Mulligan that away, or would you keep that, and why or why not? So a couple of key takeaways here. When you Mulligan, you want to know what your optimal game plan is, and then you want to Mulligan for that optimal game plan. If you can't Mulligan for that optimal game plan, keep in mind how much card cycle and how much card draw can you generate from your opening hand. And then finally, if you do have to start the game off with a pretty rough hand, keep in mind that giving away 6 memory on turn 1 isn't always so detrimental. You can definitely make a comeback from that sort of position. Anyways, folks, thanks again for watching. I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.